Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Midnight Shift podcast. I'm Justin.
I'm Jimmy.
And we're here today. We've got a special guest in the studio. Jacob, how you doing?
Doing all right.
Yeah? You want to introduce yourself? Tell us who you are. To all the listeners at home.
Yeah, I'm Jacob Hill. I'm Justin's brother. I've known Jimmy for my entire life, basically.
And me your whole life.
Yeah, and my brother.
I think he's known Justin just a little bit longer, but I'm right there.
Yeah, almost right there.
So, today's topic, chosen by Jimmy, serial killers. We're going to be talking about some serial killers. Jim, this was not the topic I thought you were going to pick.
What did you think I was going to pick?
I don't really know. I just thought you were going to choose something about comics.
I mean, I do have other hobbies. I mean, I'm okay. Wait. Pause. I am not a serial killer, but I do find them interesting. Always found them interesting. Serial killing maybe could be considered a hobby to a serial killer, but it's not one of my hobbies.
Stalking, hunting, sniffing ladies in the subway. Those are hobbies.
Never done any of those, so I guess I'm not a serial killer. I'm doing all right.
So, anyway, I guess we'll start out. Like I told you I would start out. Who's your favorite serial killer?
I don't like this question.
Come on, man. You got trading cards. What's your most prized?
I mean, everybody wants to go for like the big ones. Your Jeffrey Dahmer, your Ted Bundy.
Okay.
I don't know. I guess I'm a classics. I like Jack the Ripper.
That was my answer.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're the bug, man.
Jim, who's your favorite serial killer?
Would not call them my favorite, but the one that I've heard the most info on, just because he kind of eluded capture for a while, would be BTK.
Yeah.
Bind him, torture him, kill him. Dennis Rader.
That's what that means?
Yes.
And I didn't know that's what that meant.
That's what it meant. He would bind them, torture them, and kill them. And that's what he did exactly.
Burn or bind?
Bind. Because he it was like with ropes, and he would tie them up. He's absolutely a maniac, and what got me was just he lived a family life. He had wife and kids, or a daughter at least, and was like a church man, was like the leader of this church. He did like ADT security, and like the only reason that he would stop in between killings was because he didn't want his wife to catch him, and that was like he didn't want his family to like catch him, so that's the only thing that stopped him.
That's interesting.
So like it makes him unique in the serial killers, just because most of them are normally kind of single guys, or even if they did have relations, they didn't last long. It would be like a short-term base or whatever. But for him, he had a wife and messed up. She divorced him right away. Don't blame her, but yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that's what that stood for.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've heard his name, but I always thought I don't know. I thought it was like his initials or some shit. But that's interesting as hell.
Yep.
Yeah, I always like. It's really interesting. I think it's kind of like American, like to say like, who's your favorite serial killer?
That's the only reason why I wanted to bring it up, is because we talked about Bigfoot in the episode previous, and it's like when you think of American pastimes, and I'm trying to think of like the average dad that sits there where you end up watching UFOs, you're watching something about like Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and the next one is serial killers.
Right.
And I'm literally speaking from experience. I just left my grandparents' house. My grandpa was sitting there just watching HON, some murder mystery, as he always jokes, wants to make sure his wife doesn't kill him, so he's got to watch all the signs so he knows.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's like true crime is absolutely like
it's a big thing. It's like one of the biggest podcasts. It's what most people are entertained by. And there's even I work at a comic shop. There's a comic out about this horror book, and it was talked about on like a true crime podcast. So I've had all these people coming in now trying to get this book just because it was talked about on this podcast.
Right.
It's a big thing with America. It's something we're really across the country too.
I think a part of that's always been that the whole serial killer, like, I guess to call it an era of...
Right.
It's not a thing that happens all the time, So it is almost like an urban legend of, like, there's some dude who's cutting people up, and you can't just go out anywhere because people are getting snatched off the street. And I feel like today, I mean, you never really see, like, a serial, like, on the news. They're not, like... like in Dexter, where they're like, Bay Harbor Butcher, like you don't see that. But I mean, in the 70s, it was, every other state had a dude that was.
also due, as you're saying that, it's due to, I'm going to say John Douglas, who I will read a quote from later in his book, but he literally wrote a book about like what you're saying. It's when the FBI finally been like, enough is enough. Let's interview these guys. They're sitting in jails. Let's go to these jails. Let's interview them and see how they think, so we could try to start stopping them.
Right. It's like, I don't know. I think that like to the public, like serial killers are almost like superheroes. Like, not that they're heroic or should be like admired, but like the media presents them in a way that like it gives them attributes.
I
like,
wouldn't say superheroes. I would say like celebrities. They're truly treated like celebrities, like paparazzi. Like they have like fans. They have people that
but I think it's more like it's like Batman, man. There's like it's like mysterious. Like who is he? It could be any. But like if you think about like 1970s, right? That's like the
prime,
the peak of like serial murderers. All these guys happen in like the same decade. So you've got like they always have some name like Jack the Ripper, the Zodiac, the fucking John Wayne Gacy is dressed as a clown. You've got the Night Stalker. Like all these guys, they've got like cool
you got
names.
Ed Kemper, the co-ed butcher,
right?
Like
or like the Bay Harbor Butcher.
They all have these
the Trinity
nicknames.
Killer. They've got like a comic book name, and then they all have like.
Well, that's a media thing.
Like,
but that's also 100%.
Right,
that's a
but
media
the media
thing.
is what makes it popular.
Yeah.
If the media wasn't sharing it, like no one.
Why I brought up BTK right away though, he chose his name though. They didn't pick his name. He said, "I'm the BTK killer."
Well, that's like Jack the Ripper too.
He did that.
He did the same thing as when he was sending letters to the police. Yep. He's the one that actually called himself Jack the Ripper. That's what he signed it as. And I mean, and even that, like that was. I mean, that was. I don't know what year it was.
1800s.
Yeah, 1800
like
or
something. I want to say.
So there's no news. There's just newspapers.
And consider that to be like one of the oldest oldest.
Yeah, but
there is others.
But that's a strange case too, because you've got a lot of people now that say that like only the first murder was like truly Jack, like what they call Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
And they say that the rest of them were all people who were like copycats because they were similar but not the same, and they think that the person that was writing the letters was like a totally different killer, and that he just never got notoriety because they basically lumped all these killings under like this one name, and they I mean not notoriety, but
well, it's also
he
at
was
that time
never known.
Hard to distinguish. There wasn't like forensic evidence. There wasn't DNA. They didn't have the stuff that they have today when they do an investigation.
Oh, I mean, but that's all the way up until a lot of your forensics is newer.
Yep.
You know, it's a new
They
thing.
didn't even have that
Like,
even DNA's not.
Yeah,
that
like
old.
we were talking about this. I can't think of who the comedian is, but he's got a joke where he says he's a
John Mulaney.
No, that's the one about shooting the wall as a burglar. But some other comedians, it's something about like they'd go into a crime scene and they'd be like, someone would be like, hey, there's a pool that killer's blood over here, and they'd be like, ah, gross, have someone clean it up. Mm-hmm. They just like go about their case, and it's like, but I mean, I don't know, it's just a strange thing, man. Like
Jack the Ripper, to me, first off, that is a cool name. Like the Ripper, that's just kind of cool. And then like, I think there's a whole mystique about him. It's almost like gothic. Like you imagine like his name alone, it brings up like cobblestone streets and gas lamps and like foggy London and shit. And you've got cops
as you
with
say
like
this, all I think of is my comic book self, Gotham by Gaslight, where Batman tried to fight Jack the Ripper.
Well, right. It's like, I don't know, and it's just something kind of cool that he's like, you've got this idea of like a top hat and a cloak and some dude walking around with a knife preying on prostitutes.
Yep.
And then leaving these crazy fucking letters and like sending them in, and it's like striking terror into all of London, which at the time is like the most major city in the world. It's London. It's like New York now. And I think it's just like, to me, that's just cool.
It's a really tiny space. It's not that large and has a lot of people on it. Like how New York is too.
Right.
There's, little tiny island compared to how many people are actually there.
Right. We went to when me and Jacob were in London. Do you remember the two things that we did that was like related to
tour. Yeah, we went to the what was it called? The Dungeon Museum or something?
The London Dungeon.
London Dungeon. Then we went on that
Which
tour
was
with the guy. It was like,
yeah.
Every time we talk about someone getting killed,
He just looked like he was drunk.
Oh yeah, it was terrible.
He was like
tour.
white shirt and khakis, and like he kept fixing his shirt over and over again.
He was like a public defender.
Yeah, he was like not put together well. But we so when we were in London, we went to a place called the London Dungeon, which was like, it's a museum, but it's more like a haunted house that's a museum. So like everything is interactive. Instead of walking through like a nice hall and staring through like a window at some like models, and they're like, this is the plague room. Like they walk you through like a whole like haunted house room that they've built with like cobblestones and like dead bodies on carts and like old shops and gas lamps, and they're pumping in like the smell of like rotting corpses and stuff, and like that's the plague. And they take you through like the whole dark history of like all the crazy shit that's happened in London. So you go through like the plague, you go through like all the
it had
the guillotines.
It had
Sweeney Todd.
Yeah, but he wasn't real, but it's just part of like London history.
Right. They did a whole part with so there was a part where you were like on the London street and you meet a prostitute and she tells you about like, you know, she's like, it's 1876 or whatever year, and she's like, my friend was murdered last night, and she's telling you about like Jack the Ripper, and she's in a costume and everything, and that was pretty cool. It was a really cool thing, and it ended with the gallows, and it was like a drop ride in this museum. It was kind of one of the coolest things I've ever done.
Sounds interesting, to be honest.
Yeah, and then we went on a tour, which I wish we went on the other tour, because the other guy had like a costume and a lantern, and we just had drunk Joe from the pub.
In the middle of the day?
Yeah.
It was like 3 o'clock.
No, it wasn't. It was at night. Because we went to the Sherlock Holmes. It was like a Sherlock Holmes themed pub. We like met there, and then we left from there, and it was like a tour where they took us all through London. Well, not all through London, but through
Whitechapel.
Yeah, where he murdered everybody, and they take you to like all the spots, and they show you like where they found the body and all that stuff. And what Jacob was talking about was the guy kept going. He would like use his hand and like drag it across his neck or across like his body and go like he was like slicing it, because that's the sound of slicing skin, like you're tearing paper. But
you got sandpaper neck.
Yeah, so that was I mean, it was a cool tour. I don't remember a lot of it except that guy and seeing the other tour and going, God, I wish I was in that one.
Yeah.
Because the other guy was like totally in like a cloak and a hat, like a lantern and shit. It was way cooler.
So on Jack the Ripper, something I find interesting about that whole like series of murders is I can't remember. So there's like 2 murders that happen.
Yeah.
Like in his like killing spree, and I think
he killed a total of 5.
Yeah, well, they give one of the bodies to him, and basically the way like they say that it happened is he was in the middle of like doing, because if you don't know about Jack the Ripper, he used to like cut like body parts out of the prostitutes that he'd kill.
Yeah.
And he'd take like their liver, or like I think he took like the uterus of one woman.
Yeah.
So they said he was like in the process of doing that after she was dead, but somebody like kind of came down the alley or wherever he was at, and he left.
Right.
Well, then basically the cops are over there like all over like the Whitechapel area of London, and they find another body that had been killed while they were there, and then they track like they like kind of estimate like where he went. And basically, he was just wandering around like among all these police while they're looking at like his murders, and it's like it really goes to show like you never know who these people are, and that this was probably somebody that they saw him walking either to or from a murder.
Isn't that crazy? Like how many times in your life do you think you just
all the time
walk past? We've been to a lot of towns. Like, we've been to New York, Chicago, New Orleans, L.A. How many serial killers or like murderers do you think we've just walked past and not even known?
I've thought about that before.
Right.
Like, you know.
You have no idea.
I mean, as long as he's not snatching me up, I think I'll be okay.
Well, you're a pretty big guy. If he's
I think I'd be all right not knowing.
So.
But, like, I don't know, you saying, as you were saying, like, how he just walked around and, like, killed, that's kind of like how the son of Sam killed people. Mm-hmm. He was in New York.
I mean, but
he just went around and kind of picked a random person and then shot them. And, like, that's always been, like we talked about in our first one with Halloween, what makes Halloween scary is just the idea of, like, it being random. Just going around, it could happen anywhere or anywhere.
So, son of Sam, did you guys know that he's eligible for parole?
He will never get parole.
In May of this year.
He can find God, find
son
Jesus,
of Sam,
Muhammad, whatever God he wants.
Yeah.
He's not getting
campaigning
out.
for him?
Yeah, it's the first T-shirt of the podcast.
Yeah, is that it?
Son of Sam 2022. Make America spooky again.
Yeah, you can let me out. I promise I won't do it again.
He's like, I found, like I said, he's every time it's like, what have you found this time? This time I found Muhammad, and he will, like, set me free. Like, this time I found God, like, Jesus. Like, can I please just go? Like, no. Well, Ed Kemp kind of wanted the same thing, though. Kept kind of pushing for parole. We mentioned him earlier,
the co-ed butcher.
He was wanting it, too, because of his cooperation with the FBI, but they said no.
I mean, just because you told us where
you
the
hacked
bodies
up
were.
like 11 people.
You hacked up people
We're
and
not
buried
gonna let
them.
you out.
We're not going to let you out. Or
you're kind of not a good guy.
Just went to random people and just shot them. Like, yeah, all it takes for you to start doing your spree is to get a revolver. We don't need you to. No.
So why is he so important?
Who?
The son of Sam.
He's just a serial killer.
He's
just
just
from the 70s, 80s that went around. What made him? He's another one that named himself. He said that his neighbor's dog barked or something. He heard it, and I am the son of Sam, and like he tried to blame it on his neighbor's dog that the dog spoke to him.
Yeah, that he was like talking to him.
Like, it was like the dog was like possessing him.
Oh.
I think he killed the neighbor's dog too.
As Jacob also said, he's trying to get eligible for parole.
Yeah, he's trying to come back to the streets.
But he's one that's like tried the reform and always tries. There's like a special on him, like how he's gotten better while he's in jail and he helps out the inmates. We should let him out.
I mean, Edward Kemp. So he's another interesting one because, I don't.
He turned himself in.
Yeah, but the comparisons between him and Ted Bundy are like real close. Because like if you look at their like person and their stature, because I think Ted Bundy was like 5'10" and Ed small. Kemp was like 6'9". Yeah, he was like a giant.
Literally scared the officers arresting him.
Yeah, but I mean they're so like similar in like what they did. I mean, and it was. I mean, I guess they always say it's like a thing with serial killers, like the sexual deviancy that like a lot of serial killers show. I mean, I'm sure you can run down a list, but like some of the big ones you're talking like, I mean, even the big three, John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, they all had sex with corpses and, violated corpses and dismembered people.
Well, and they also, a lot of them also had a lot of family problems too.
Yeah,
problems with your mother.
So Ed Kemp, though, he murdered. This is funny. It makes me laugh, but I got a sick sense of humor. He killed his grandmother, his dad's mom, and then he didn't want his grandfather to have to live in a world without his wife, so he killed him too.
Oh, he was doing him a favor?
Yeah, he was 15. They put him in a mental institution. He was there for 5 years and then got out and he was like 20. And that's like he hadn't even started like his like murder spree yet of like killing all these co-eds.
He was already fucking too deep and he didn't even start.
There was also the reason why that supposedly he went to his grandparents was something about he was creepy with his sister and his mom had him like living in the basement.
His mom
like, go to your grandma's house, like get away from her.
Basically they said like that his mom would like lock him in the basement because she was worried he was gonna like sexually assault his sisters or something. Well, then he got like fed up with that, so he went to go find his biological dad. But his biological dad, I mean, he sounds like he's a real POS when you put it this way. But his son was a serial killer, and he killed like all of his family members. But his dad was like, "I don't want anything to do with you."
I wouldn't either.
Go live with your grandparents, and then he murdered them. And
then was a good call on his dad's part. Must have had good judgment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. It honestly reminds me of. Have you seen the I mean, I know you, Justin, has. I don't know if Spence has seen it. The 13 Ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of the Juggernaut from that, of where like you just have this giant man who, and I mean, a lot of people say like he was like a gentle giant, like he wasn't like a dude that they were like he wasn't like a devious guy. I mean, when he was doing all this, he would go to a bar that was frequented by police.
Yep.
And would like hang out with the guys that were like investigating him.
He also liked cop shows and stuff too. He loved cop shows. So and the cops also like watching the cop shows. So they'd go up and they'd like exchange stories, and he'd also use it too, which is something they've learned now, like through when they did their investigations, that they like to hear what's going on. They like to hear how the investigation is. So like when you have that person that's standing on the side of the road that's just wanting to see, they may they may know more than they're appearing, or could have information, and that like they like to return too.
Around that time, I can't think of the psychiatrist's name, but I was watching a documentary about Ed Kemp, and he was like one of the FBI like psychiatrists, and he basically said, he's like, you have two like groupings of like serial killers, and it's one group all like never wants to talk about like what the murders. They don't want to talk about it.
There's the talkative,
and then you have a whole nother group that's all they want to do is tell somebody about like these murders that they've committed. They just want to talk about them. So, I mean, I don't know. It's a strange thing. Like, I don't know, serial killers are. It's just a weird thing. Like, and to think like it wasn't like a fad. Like, it's strange that it just went away.
Well, and that's what. I wouldn't say it's went away, and that's what they talk about in this book, is like signs for it. And the biggest thing is like family issues, noticing the signs, us as like a society knowing, and also sharing the info. Because back in the day, like we talked about in the 70s, when you think of that time, there was no computers, there's no phones, and police departments didn't like to share their info. There was no faxing or they didn't share. You know, it was kind of like however we caught people is how we did it. There was no united, like a whole country uniting trying to figure out crime. Like where today, if someone, you could look up a warrant for someone like, you know, overweight, or if they have a record, you're going to see it right away.
Yeah.
Have you heard of a guy, so I watched, so they call him the Confession Killer. Have you heard of this guy?
I don't think so.
So he's got a documentary on Netflix. And this dude's interesting. He's got about one tooth, for starters. He killed his, I think it's his mom. I want to say, I haven't watched this in like a while, but he killed his mom, had sex with her corpse, because that's what serial killers do, and then he turned himself in, and so he brought the cops out there, and he's this like real like a country kind of guy, and he brought the cops out there and showed them like the body and all that stuff. And then the big thing that started him out was he said, "What about all those other women I killed?" And then he basically started lying to the police, taking credit for all these like missing women. And he said I've killed women in every way except poison. And he said like he would just drive across the country and just pick up whoever, or just go and just murder people, and he was taking credit for like 300 murders or something. And then but the whole time, like, he's getting all these, like, privileges. He's getting, like, the media, and they're explaining, like, everywhere he went, he'd get, like, whatever food he wanted. He always made sure that he had a strawberry milkshake whenever he was doing, like, the interviews, and he always had his smokes, and he always had his snacks and all this stuff, and they would drive him around. He's staying in hotels and stuff, and just all this stuff. They're driving him to, like, every town to go and talk about, like, if he killed any of these people that are, like missing. So then it's like and they finally find out like there's no possible way you killed all these people, because these people died on the same day 500 miles apart. And like eventually they found out that he's just like full of shit. So he essentially just killed his mom and then started taking credit for all this other stuff, because he just loved like the attention. He just loved, and like, I mean, honestly, he's going to prison forever. So what's it matter if he killed one person or 1,000? He gets the same amount of time. So, and I think he was expecting execution anyway. So, the documentary was pretty interesting. Like I said, I haven't watched it in a while, but I know it's on Netflix. It's called The Confession Killer. And the whole thing is about, like, either we caught the most prolific serial murderer in the history of the world, or it's all a big hoax. And it was all a huge hoax. Another one was...
another good documentary is...
Tiger King.
Yeah. No, it's
it's
like Wickedly Vile, Extremely Evil. It's got Zac Efron in it.
It's not a documentary. That's a biopic.
Yeah, but it's based off of a book that was written by can't think of her name. Basically it was Ted Bundy's girlfriend through like the whole time that he was murdering people.
Right.
And she was like during the whole trial, she was like pretty messed up about like they're like explaining all these things of like all these girls that he killed.
Right.
And she fits the description of the like all of his victims, but he never tried to like kill her. So she's like, well, like she never understood, and like to her he was innocent. Like in the book she explains like she doesn't think that it was him, like she thought for a long time that like they had the wrong guy because he was
lied.
I mean, he was a good liar. But
he was a lawyer. Of course he was a great liar.
Yeah, to go back on something that Jim said about like police departments not sharing information, that was a big reason why Ted Bundy got away for so long.
Got away, to be honest with you.
Is because, and I mean they talk about it in there, is that like they didn't share information with each other, so
they were like afraid to. It was almost like a prideful thing. Like if I caught someone, it's because of my good skills, and it wasn't till also, and at the same time, the FBI in the 70s were catching bank robbers.
Right.
That they were created at the end of the day. J. Edgar Hoover created the FBI to stop bank robbers, and now we are in the 1970s, and the biggest thing was serial killers, and the local police couldn't do it, especially when they were spanning across like different counties. When they went across multiple state lines, it became almost impossible for them to catch. It had to become something that the Federal Bureau had to take up. Well, and at the time, they didn't even have anything.
You didn't have a means of doing it.
That's why
you didn't have a means of sharing information.
True.
Now you can internet. You can send a text immediately, instant, across the country. But they didn't. I mean, the best you had, they had fax, I guess. Yep. So you could fax, but I mean.
But even then, they wouldn't fax anything like Jacob said.
But you can't send an image across.
True.
So I mean, that's how he would get away.
But I mean, the big reason. I mean, that's not even actually the reason they caught Ted Bundy. I mean, to my knowledge, the reason they caught him is definitely some like prison corruption, where basically this warden was like, we're going to take impressions of your teeth. They like forced him to give impressions, and they used it. It made like fake jaws, basically.
Yeah.
Because Ted Bundy had his like trademark, I guess, was he would bite his victims.
Yeah.
So they were able to actually connect him.
He usually would bite him on their ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was ass, or I believe nipple, like around the breast as well.
Yeah.
I mean, he was another one that was like a sexual deviant killer that would like.
I mean, that was his whole thing.
Have sex with bodies and severed heads and shit.
Yeah.
But they actually used like his teeth, and that was like the smoking gun. Is like, we've got your teeth impressions in like I want to say he's killed like 20-something girls or something like that. So.
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
he was
it was
also
a lot
like smooth. Like he just did stuff that like threw
mean,
people for a loop. Like, have you heard about how he got married?
Yeah, when he got married when he was going on trial.
Yeah, because there's like a thing where like
your spouse can't testify against you.
There is that, but the way that, but like if you were on trial for murder and you were like, I want to get married, like they're not going to be like, yeah, sure, great, here's the paperwork. But whatever state he was in, I think it was Texas.
He proposed in court.
Exactly. So they did it in front of a judge. They agreed to it in front of a judge, so it was a legal binding marriage, and then they couldn't have that girl
testify
against him.
Yeah, I mean, because he was going to law school.
Yeah.
But he I want to say he only went for like a semester, and then
then he got arrested.
well, no, he just stopped going. But he would hang out at the campus and he was telling people that he was going to law school.
And I'm pretty sure he was representing himself. So one of the times he escaped, he was
using the
law library.
The law library, and he jumped out the window.
Yeah.
And in that movie, that dude was trying to give some girl, I don't know who she was, the ickily stickly in the courtroom, but
That'll get you. That's how they let Michael Myers out too. Rob Zombie's Halloween.
And
I don't think that was the ickly stickly. I think that was the rapely wapely.
Yeah, that wasn't very good for them.
Yeah.
So, Ted Bundy is definitely got popular a few years ago. The strangest thing I saw was like when girls were like, "He's so handsome."
Yeah, he'd cut your head off.
You know what he did?
Well, no, I'll tell you. So, like, one of the craziest things that I think about, like when serial killers is brought up, is like, I can't think of another serial killer that like whenever you think of like even like Ed Kemp, like you know, like John Wayne Gacy, they were always picking up like loners, like people that were like hitchhiking,
right?
Which is
like
slowly...
Ted Bundy was like abducting people and like what's the lake that he went to? And there's like,
well, I don't know what it's called. I don't even know. Really, I don't even know where he was. Was he like around like Colorado? Or something?
Yeah, Colorado, like Washington State.
Yeah.
But so there's a lake that he goes to, and people have like family like vacation pictures, and in the back, like they're worth like thousands of dollars now because in the background is his like V8 Beetle.
Right.
And he murdered 2 girls there, and like people are like selling these like family photos of like they're like taking pictures, and there's like his Beetle. And one of the funniest things I think of that case is people are like, yeah, some guy was walking around with a cast asking people to help him load a sailboat on his Beetle. Like, and you didn't think that was a little shady? Like,
yeah.
You weren't like on his Beetle? Like,
yeah, help me put a sailboat on top of my car.
Yeah, it was pretty. I mean,
I mean that's just like the John Wayne Gacy. He painted pictures of clowns in prison that are now worth a bunch of money too.
Yeah, I mean Charles Manson did the same thing.
Hey, Charles Manson recorded music.
I don't remember what I was.
People were getting fired from those prisons for trying to like smuggle like what was it, California where he was?
Yeah.
At like San Quentin, they were getting fired because they were smuggling like artwork and stuff
signed stuff from
him, and it was worth like thousands and thousands of dollars.
I heard something. I think it was like a radio show or a podcast, and they had someone call in because they were talking about like Charles Manson, and they said like, did anyone in here like, was anyone in prison and knew Charles Manson? And someone called in and he was like, my cell was right next to Charles Manson. And he was like, he was a pretty quiet guy. He said he used to bake a lot. And he said he baked once. And the host is like, did you ever eat anything he baked? He said, hell no. He said he'd slide it over. He'd be like, hey man, how's that brownie? He'd be like, yeah, Charlie, it was real good. And he's like, I flushed it straight down the toilet.
Yeah, he was interesting, and he kind of makes him and Richard Peck were also kind of smaller individuals. So when they would be interviewed,
Peck or Speck?
I think it is Speck. I think
it's
Peck.
Speck.
But it's Richard Speck. Thank God he's not around. He'd be coming after me.
Ooh.
But he wouldn't sit in a chair like how we are. He would like to sit same way of Manson. They like to sit with their butt like in the back of the chair. So when they would be like above you, so they would always like constantly like be above, and like so he could preach down. But speaking of Manson, do we bring him up? I mean, who'd he kill?
I mean,
Sharon
there's arguments
Tate and
that
everybody in
even
that
if
house?
there's arguments that even if he wasn't involved in the Tate LaBianca murders, he murdered other people.
Like I said, there is no evidence that he didn't. But like
he was
people
in and
try to
out
say,
of prisons his whole life. His mom was a prostitute.
He honestly reminds me of like a modern day Hitler almost, because he was a smooth talker and he can manipulate people. And honestly though, like I don't consider Manson a serial killer. He's almost in like the same boat as like a Hitler or a Putin, just because he can talk people into doing terrible things.
Or
but I mean,
who's that guy?
He was leading a cult, man.
John Jones.
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, but John Jones was different because John Jones used religion.
Yeah, he believed that his
Charles Manson ran like an actual cult. Okay, so when you
I believe he would give them drugs and like keep them up.
Well,
for
that's
days.
kind of what it is. So like, what he would take in these like kids, because this is like, I think it's 1969 is when he did all.
And
his
it was
stuff.
like, and they were like,
they
good
mark
kids.
him
They were,
as
like,
the end of
MVPs.
like the free love, like Charles Manson's murders are like the end of like the hippie times.
Yep.
Because like everything was like free love and everything's great, trust your neighbors, all this stuff, and then these motherfuckers in Hollywood get murked.
Carry a shotgun. That was the motto
and
after
then
that.
it's like maybe I shouldn't trust these crazy hippies anymore. So what he would do was like he would get these
It was
like
a lot
kids.
of young girls.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was one.
And he would take them out to the
there
ranch.
was one guy, I can't think of his name, but he was like a football
They
star.
called him Tex.
Yeah. Yep.
He was involved in it. He's the one
He
that
was
said
like the
that
ring-
quote, "I'm the devil and I'm here to do the devil's business." So what he would basically do, I mean, when you join a cult, you erase who they were before.
Their identity.
Right. So they all would get a nickname. That's why you have like Tex, and you have everyone like would have a nickname. You wouldn't go by what you were called outside.
Mm-hmm.
And the only person that was called by their actual name was Charlie. Why? Well, he's Charlie. And they lived out on, it's called Spawn Ranch. It's not there anymore. Now it's all gone. But it was an old Western movie set, and it was owned by this old guy he was blind. Like, so that's, if you've seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like that guy was real. Like, that guy actually owned that ranch.
And they tried to kill Leonardo DiCaprio, and he lit him on fire in his pool.
I sure wish that's how that happened. But no, so a lot of that information was like actually happened. So like it's true that Sharon Tate lived in a house where one of the guys that like told Charlie like your music is ass, it was like his neighbor or like used to live there or something. So like a lot of that information is true, and that old blind guy actually owned that ranch and was actually there all the time. But they kept him on like drugs and shit, and Charlie did the same thing. He kept these kids on all kinds of drugs, and he would tell them about like Helter Skelter, which was basically like a race war.
And it was something that he didn't. They've said later on that he didn't actually come up with. That someone
he
else had
didn't
been
come up
preaching
with
that
the
10
term.
years. He didn't come up with anything, but like 10 years before that, someone else had been preaching that same thing.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, he ran a cult, which is kind of funny to me because when they found him hiding in a cabinet, which is, to me is just kind of funny. He was actually a real small guy.
Okay.
So what they...
I'm just, for the record, me and Jacob, you can agree. Like, when I hear that, just make me try. There's no way I could hide in a cabinet. Like, I'm not hiding in a refrigerator. I'm not hiding in a cabinet.
He was a tiny guy.
You might as well just put me in the room and shut the door. Yeah, put me in the garage, shut the door. The garage won't open.
He's just standing in the middle of it. I tried hiding in the cabinet, man. It was real tiny.
I'm a big dude.
It was real small.
Real small.
Real small. Inside jokes. But anyway. So like, what they actually... I know those girls, like, testified against him.
A few of them did, but then a few of them, like, one of the chicks is locked up and still swears.
Yeah.
Like, still follows Charlie.
That's why they have to keep all the followers away from him, and then they don't like to keep too many inmates
dead?
by him because they don't want him to get new followers. He is dead now,
but
yeah, I was gonna say he's dead.
2 years ago.
But no, so what they actually, like...
They never let him out.
And
like, what
they're all alive
what
still.
they prosecute him on. If
him?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't murder anybody.
He got prosecuted for murder, I'm
for
pretty
conspiracy.
sure.
For conspiracy for murder, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
but they say that
what
he
was the
came
conspiracy?
Conspiracy is like sending someone to go kill people.
No, I mean, I know that. Like, I watched Tiger King, okay? But anyway.
Joe
but, like...
Free our man, Joe.
Like, isn't there a difference between being like, hey, go kill those people, and me being like, hey, I'll give you $1,000 to kill those people? That's conspiracy.
That's murder to hire.
Yeah, but...
Or murder for hire. But conspiracy is if I'm in charge of... If I'm Adolf Hitler and I didn't really kill anybody, but, everybody died anyway because of what I did and told everyone how to do it, I'm still, I'm guilty.
I think that's genocide, not murder.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, it's genocide, but it's
How many people do you have
the
to kill
difference
before
of,
it's genocide?
if I give you a gun, or if I hand you a gun and then I hold a gun to your head and I say, shoot him or I'll kill you.
Okay, I hear what you're saying.
I'm still a murderer. I didn't kill anyone. I was just in the room and had a gun. Nope, you're still a murderer. You're still a bad person.
I get it now.
So that's basically like what he did. But there's also stories that like, see, I don't remember everything, but I think so. They killed 2 different groups of people. They killed Sharon Tate and them, and then the LaBiancas were at a different
ranch.
Well, that was a different night. It was like 2 nights in a row. So they went to the first house, and then they went to the.
Well, they
Sharon
always
Tate
talk
house
about
next.
Sharon Tate because she was pregnant.
Well, she was a movie star and pregnant and married to Polanski. What is his name? Roman Polanski. It was his wife and his baby.
Didn't they kill him too?
No, he was out of town.
Oh.
I think he was in Europe. But like, what's interesting about the Charles Manson stuff is all the like very scary culty shit that like happened. Like they didn't just go in there and like murder him. Like they wrote like pig and like
they were
racial slurs like up on the walls and stuff, and like all kinds of pentagrams, and then they had that whole quote about like I'm the devil and all this shit. So that's like what's fascinating about them, because it's like, is this dude the devil? And then you get the interviews with Charles Manson where he's just batshit crazy, where he's like, he's like, do you feel shame? Do you feel weird? Jip, 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 jip. And it's like, the fuck is this guy talking about? There's some stories that he was a part of a like MK Ultra experiment too, with the CIA, and that he was all fucked up in his head, and like toward the end of his life, he like talked about that. Like you could see interviews and stuff where he's like, well, I didn't say anything when they were experimenting on me and all this stuff, and everyone's like, Charlie's all fucking crazy and weird.
Yeah, but you can't spend your whole life being crazy and weird and then get crazier and weirder at the end of your life.
That's fair.
I think you're just crazy and weird at that point.
Let's talk about I think who's possibly the most influential to modern media, Ed Gein.
Yeah.
Ed Gein, I'd say in this area though, John Wayne Gacy.
Well, the problem is they're all from here. Jeffrey Dahmer, John Wayne, Ed Gein, they're all from.
Well, Ed Gein more from what, Wisconsin.
Yeah, but Ed Gein.
So's Jeffrey Dahmer. He was in Milwaukee.
Yeah, true.
So stay out
yeah,
of
what's up with Wisconsin, man?
For real.
You guys got good cheeses and serial killers, huh?
Known for 2 things. Pure Wisconsin, or whatever their slogan is.
That's pure Michigan.
Pure Michigan.
Pure Wisconsin.
Also interesting.
Pure Wisconsin cheese.
Most serial killers are normally male Caucasians, like Caucasian males. Like you don't normally see. The only time he was never convicted of multiple killings, though. My opinion, I believe, would be Wayne D. Williams. If you guys remember him, picture there from in the book. But he was with the Atlantic child murderers, and it was when all those like black children were just going missing.
Yeah.
And he only got convicted on it was like an adult, but not the other kids. But yet, like 6 of the other victims had his same dog hair and carpet fibers, but they didn't charge him on those victims.
I think Ricky Ramirez. I mean, that sounds Hispanic.
Yeah, he's Hispanic.
So
yeah.
I mean, there's one that's not a straight
Caucasian,
straight white guy.
When the other thing I think of is Eileen Warhos too, as a female.
I also think that comes from
Eileen
Warhos, like police and minority relations in the 70s. I think that has something to do with it.
Well, I also think,
I mean,
I think also
you can kind of do a direct correlation between like policing and like minority minority rich neighborhoods,
right?
To where like it's probably harder to get away with murder if you're already being accused by the police of being
I would say that
like
other
a bad
races,
guy.
kind of going what you say, that other races
and then as like a white dude who like owns a business, they're like, that dude's not doing anything wrong, but really he's cutting people's heads off.
Yeah, he's fine. We're gonna go harass.
Yeah.
We're gonna go harass black people because we're 1960s and 50s racists.
Yeah.
But it's also it's a family thing. Those cultures are more family tone. Like normally a Mexican family has like a little more together than some like white families or Caucasian can separate. They're not as like close. And that's what it is, though. It's when you separate them when they're alone, when they're on their own. Ed Kemp only had the one grandma that was going, they don't have multiple relatives that are going and checking to see that. And when you don't have that and it's a smaller family, I feel like it lets that happen. When you have a great big family and you're constantly all hanging out and going to dinners, you're noticing when, hey, your fingernails are all red, looks like you just scratched like scratch someone. Are you killing people? Like they would see you. You can't get
that's
away.
That's a real jump there. Hey, you got red fingertails. You're a serial killer.
There's no other sign.
I've been waiting weeks to tell you this.
But that's like Jeffrey Dahmer, dude. He lived with like his dad.
Yeah.
And like, I was watching some stuff with him where they interviewed him and his dad at like the same time, and they talked about like, I don't know, Jeffrey Dahmer was just a fucking weirdo to start with. I mean, anyone that like drills holes in people's heads and then dumps acid in there is a fucking weirdo.
Well, they talk about, if you like look into it, they talk about where, like, up until he was like hit puberty, like they talk about how like he was just like a normal kid, and then they're like he hits he hits puberty, and then just out of nowhere he starts like killing cats and like
that just doesn't sound right to me.
But
sounds like he was killing beetles and we just didn't know.
Well, no, because another thing they talk about is where because he was a paranoid schizophrenic, I believe, and they talk about that has a lot to do with like hormones changing and like puberty and stuff is like when that actually like becomes like in the forefront. That's why a lot of like these serial killers like they don't start until they're in like older ages. And they say that's like a thing. True. I mean, it might. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist.
Till older ages, because no 10-year-old's gonna kill me. You pit me against any 10-year-old in the world, I put my money on me.
I mean, I'm not hitchhiking in anybody's cars that looks like Jeffrey Dahmer. So.
I'm not hitchhiking if it's a 10-year-old driving.
I'm not hitchhiking ever.
It is 2022. I am not hitchhiking. I will either call one of my friends on my cellular device,
we got
use
Uber
or Lyft.
I mean, that'd be great for serial killers. Uber everybody.
No, because
it does not
take
help.
His phone.
Everybody knows where you're at.
Justin, they pick you up. So I know which driver is picking him up, and then you get into their car.
I know what he looks like too. He's got a profile.
Yeah, you have to have a profile.
He looks creepy. I'm clicking off.
Submit all this info. My name is John Smith.
My name is Jeffrey Dahmer. We should start an Uber company and we should start Ubering and put all serial killer names in.
That's horrible.
That would be absolutely terrifying. Ed Gein is coming to pick you up.
Also, I don't know, like why do they all always have scary names? Like
they don't. Jeffrey Dahmer's not a scary name.
You're telling me you would hang out with a guy whose name was Dahmer?
You're telling me you would hang out with a guy whose last name was, I don't know, fucking Gein? It's a last name. What does it matter?
Gein? Absolutely not.
But they're not scary until... Like,
no, it's still scary.
No, it's not.
Okay, listen. Justin Hill is a very, like basic name.
James Spence sounds like a murderer.
Listen, if one of the three of us is a serial killer, listen, it's you.
I mean,
did a semester in law school.
Yeah.
Very cunning personality.
I'm not catching up to them. They start running. All right, just go ahead.
Hey, so like.
You got bodies in your basement, Justin?
I don't have a basement. I have a crawl space.
You got bodies in your crawl space?
Okay, yeah.
Listen, John Wayne.
So next topic.
Next topic. Why does it stink? The furnace just turned on.
No, so you could say like puberty was weird for Jeffrey Dahmer all you want, but like he kept a human hand in a box. And wouldn't let his dad open it.
You don't?
No, I don't. I never
tried to catch you up there.
Never had the urge. Never thought, you know what I'll do? Drill a hole in this guy's head and put acid in it. Maybe
it wasn't acid. He put chlorine in there, okay?
Oh, that's better. Oh, never mind. He's not that bad. I've been there.
I mean, I think the dude, I mean, I don't want to say he'd be okay, but, I mean... He'd already bludgeoned him with a dumbbell. I don't think the guy was really caring about getting bleach poured in his skull.
Yeah, I would. What kind of?
He probably didn't feel it.
That? And then he put him in acid in his fucking apartment.
Yeah, where do you get acid from?
The pool store.
Okay.
I don't think we should talk about this. We're encouraging serial killers on the podcast.
I mean, it is what it is.
Let them know how to do it.
Google is free.
Yeah, you think so?
Yeah.
So anyway, he I don't know, man. That's just strange to me. And it's just, because he had a relationship with his dad the whole time that he was doing all this stuff. And his dad would keep asking him why are you always gone? And he'd say things like, "What's in that box?" And Jeffrey's like, "Nothing's in that box." And it was like a dude's hand.
These are not the body parts you're looking for.
He hit him with a Jedi mind trick.
Oh,
That's funny.
That was it. That was it.
You want
That's
to go
what we
home
didn't
and
know.
rethink your life. Should have used it on himself.
Maybe his dad was really the serial killer, and Jeffrey Dahmer just took the fall for it.
Maybe, but probably not. Do you think that the guy that played Hawkeye is gonna he played Jeffrey Dahmer in the movie? You know that?
He already looks like a murderer even when he's playing Hawkeye, so that scares me then.
The guy who played not Quicksilver in the MCU, but Quicksilver in the
Evan Peters?
Yeah, he's played like 8 serial killers, but he also played Jeffrey Dahmer.
But not like real ones.
He played Jeffrey Dahmer.
When did he play Jeffrey Dahmer?
I'm pretty sure in the movie Dahmer on Netflix.
That was
Netflix, we need a sponsorship.
No, that's Hawkeye.
I don't think it is.
Oh,
No, it is.
oh, now we have to look it up.
All right.
Time for the Google. You said it was free?
Google break.
Yeah, no, that's Hawkeye.
I don't think it is.
It is. Before he was in the MCU, he was drilling holes in dudes' heads.
No, he wasn't. Before he was
Hawkeye.
Before he was
like,
Manning was
hold
running away
head.
from Michael Myers.
Before he was in. I think you're talking about. No, you're talking about the movie in 2002, my guy.
Yeah, you know when I grew up? 2002.
Yeah, but you said it before he was in the MCU. He
So
was.
that was
You
definitely
know what
before
else
the
he
MCU.
was before he was in the MCU?
No.
Hansel and Gretel. Okay.
Was it really?
Yes.
Like the one with like Howie Mandel?
No.
You don't remember watching that? Where Howie Mandel's like, I'm the Sandman. This is a bog. Werewolves don't like bogs.
Yeah. Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer story. Evan Peters played Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, but Evan Peters also started out playing serial killers. Like
No,
his first role.
he wasn't. I don't think you're a serial killer if you shoot up a high school.
Okay, well,
That's something that John Douglas even said in his book, though, is as we go into the future, we're going to see less serial killers as the traditional means, and more of them will walk into a school or a public setting and shoot because they will be able to get away with a mass amount of murderers easier than they will today if they try to do it like how old
I think that guy's a serial killer.
Well, we were just talking about this because, like,
he said he would break down, like, and have he had mental problems, and like he imagined the killers doing stuff to him because he spent hours on end interviewing these guys. I could not imagine that. Sitting in a room, like we're talking about this for an hour, and then we're going to go home and do regular lives. I could not imagine actually sitting down how we were like doing this podcast and having the serial killer and be like, tell me your story. Oh, I remember when I first killed my mother.
I've done that in 2 separate jobs.
Well, see, I've never worked at a prison.
The
Unlike,
Department of
the
Child
2 guys.
Services was
You
pretty
talk to
rough.
serial killers?
Huh?
You talk to serial killers at the Department of Child
No,
Services?
but I talked to people that did bad stuff to their kids
Oh, yeah, that's
at the
pretty rough.
Department of Child Services. And then, serial killers at the prison. I definitely spent 12 hours in, 24 hours because I was there for multiple days in a medical room with a dude that stabbed his friend in the neck.
Yeah, I don't think he's a serial killer, though.
No, but I mean...
We only have one serial killer.
I mean,
there.
once you start down the hill, what's it matter if it's 1 or 12? They do the same thing to all the people.
Well, then
That's
also
not
it's creepy
true.
of like we talked about earlier though when they start taking gifts or taking parts or keeping
Right.
a trophy.
I
That
think-
gets weird, especially like
Yeah.
Jack the Ripper, like older ones that would cut into their bodies or whatever, and then you get like weirder ones like BTK would keep like the bra. One of the reasons why his wife why he quit killing from 1993 to
Ed Kemp
2005. Go ahead.
Ed Kemp cut some girl's head off, and he was like buried it under his window, like looking at his window.
So his mom
he
could
wanted to feel
look over him.
No, it was some girl's head, and he definitely put his penis in it, but he wanted to. He said he wanted her to be like close to him.
Well, that's
but
what
then
it
he
was
also killed his
It
mom
was
and
also
cut her
because his
head
mom
off.
used to look out that window all the time, so that way he
Well,
said
no,
that his
that-
mom liked people looking up to him, so that way he
No,
literally
that's when he
could be
cut his
looking over.
mom's head off and put it on the fire mantle and was throwing darts at it and would like fuck it and shit.
What is wrong with these people?
Well, they're serial killers.
He said this and the thing
Kinda
is, when he
scum of
did
the
this,
earth.
he said this while eating a slice of pizza.
They gave this guy pizza?
Yes, because they'd be interviewing him
I like
for hours, so they'd bring him incentives to get them to open up. That's what he talks about. Like, these guys didn't want to talk. They had to bring stuff to, like, make them, like, they'd find out they like orange pop, so they'd bring them an orange pop to, like, try to get them
All
to
right,
open
I'm going
up.
to throw this out there. If you create your own serial killer name, you want to talk. If you're going by the BTK fucking killer and you told the news, hey, I want to be called the BTK killer.
Yeah, he did.
You want to talk.
But he wasn't caught until 2005. Like,
Yeah.
he like, and do you know how they caught him?
I told you I didn't know anything about the guy.
They caught him. They had, like, had hints on who he was, and they had his DNA for a long time, but they actually have to get a sample to prove, it's him. They know what the BTK's killer's DNA was. So his daughter...
Hey, Jim,
Yes.
real quick. Can you do... So, like, how many people did he kill? Do you know have, like, a
What,
number?
we doing stats? His
No,
lifetime?
It was
I'm
in
curious.
the 20s or something, I want to say. But
So,
it might
like,
be
when
more.
did he start killing people?
Like
Was it, like...
73, he killed an
Okay.
entire family. It was like a mom, a dad.
They didn't catch him till 2005?
Well,
Yes.
that's what I'm asking.
He's
That's-
literally
because
the one
that's
that,
probably,
he's
like,
the one
the
that
most-
slipped through. They couldn't, like, they're like, oh, serial killers wouldn't go to church. He was, like, the leader of this church group. Like, he broke a lot of the stereotypes that they were thinking.
Jim,
Yes.
you go to church a lot, man. You're starting to hang on this serial killer radar.
Well,
You and Justin, you got
Luckily,
two
I
ticks
won't
up.
keep an eye on
No,
him.
he won't be the BTK. He'll be the BK Lounge.
The BK Lounge.
Jim knows all about
it was
the
10
BK
people,
Lounge.
but he killed them between 1974 and 1991. It was just sporadic and random, so they couldn't, like, keep up with it, and it was all in, like, a Wichita, Kansas area. Then in 2005, he sent this is weird. He sent a letter going, if I send in a floppy disk with information, could you track that? Like, asking the
Oh,
FBI.
I've
And the
heard about
FBI
this.
is like, absolutely not. Please send it. So he sends it. They're like, all right, we got to figure this out. So they crack it. They're like, all right.
They definitely could track it. 100%.
They can, and they
that
could
was like
see
the whole
deleted
thing.
files on it, and they seen that, oh, it was from this church. They looked at who owned the church and was, like, in charge of this, and they saw one name, Dennis Rader. The film studio where, like, he dropped that letter off, they remember seeing, like, a weird Jeep pulling away. Dennis Rader owns a Jeep, so it's just, like, they started, like, finding him, and then they're like, okay, but they needed his DNA to prove it, and they can't
Right.
just grab DNA. His daughter was going to a university. They had, like, a pap smear where she just went for, like, an annual pap smear, and they got a warrant to get that result, and then they
That's
tested
kind
it.
of weird.
That's
It's
rough.
absolutely weird. And then tested that her, like, pap smear, with the DNA, that she was a relative of BTK,
Yeah.
her father. And then they went and arrested
I
him.
just
and
want
when
to
they
point
arrested
out
him,
that
they
that
go,
sounds like some creepy, like,
do you know
FBI
why we're
guy
arresting you?
who's
And
like,
he just
oh,
smiles. Yeah, I think I have an idea. What the? But it's like you said, though. He was
So-
quiet for those.
so
years.
is
He'd
he
been
alive
waiting to
still?
talk. Yes.
I mean, a lot of them are.
A lot of, yes.
Because, I mean, they took away, like, execution
76
in most
right now.
states, man.
Yeah, I know.
So they don't do it. Even if you're... I mean, Charles Manson gets to fucking live. Who are they going to kill?
I mean, a lot of them get killed in prison.
But not by the state.
Jeffrey Dahmer got killed in prison, and they stabbed him in his neck or something.
No, I think he got executed.
No, they murdered him in prison. John Wayne
A lot of them got
John
murdered
Wayne
in prison.
Gacy and
Ted
Ted Bundy
Bundy.
both got executed by the
Ted
state.
That's
Bundy
why they
got
started
lethal
putting, like,
injection.
extra protection and stuff around them, just because there's people that would want to take it out on them. Same way with BTK, someone
Right.
tried attacking him.
Yeah, Ed Gein was
People
like
in prison
that.
don't like
What-
these guys.
Were you guys
No.
were talking about how they're all, like, strange about their moms and
Mhm.
like fucking women?
But it's but
That's
when you
what
think
he was
about
like.
it,
He so Ed Gein is like the inspiration for
The
Norman
Texas.
Bates
Mhm.
from Psycho, and for Leatherface, Texas
So
Chainsaw
well.
Massacre, and for Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. So that's why I said he's like the most inspirational to, like, modern media, because, like, so many movies and,
Well,
like,
same way
iconic
with-
serial killers are based on literally what he did.
The Silence
He's the
of the
one.
Lambs, the FBI guy that Clarice is trying to impress the entire
Yeah.
time, is based off John Douglas.
Yeah.
The guy in Dexter, the FBI profiler,
Yeah.
was based on John Douglas. He's
Right.
like, it's a similar thing, though. As much as famous as, like, the killers are, they try to do this guy, and that's why I
Yeah.
brought his book. Like I said,
So,
when you
so
think of
Ed
it, that's who
Gein's the
started
one
it.
that he's the one that made, like, the lampshade out of skin and, like, a belt out of human nipples and, like,
See,
weird
but
shit
it's
like that.
but it's weird because
and he
didn't
also
they
created he created a whole suit of female flesh and then would wear it while naked and dance outside pretending to be his mom.
But I don't know. It's weird to, like, because they always talk about him and they're always like, "Oh yeah, like he was a serial killer." But I'm pretty sure they only got like 2 confirmed, like, kills.
I don't think so, man. He had a
Well-
lot of dead bodies in his house.
Well, no, because they talk about that he used to dig up graves all the time.
I mean, regardless,
That he would
he's
go
a
and he'd
fucking
like
weirdo.
steal bodies, but like but they talk about he's only ever killed like 2 people.
Yeah, but I think you kind of like earn points. Like, okay, like
When you skin a already dead body.
when you
Get a
skin them and make a
three-pointer.
fucking lamp out of it. I mean, when you
right.
start making
That's definitely
clothing
a free
out
throw.
out of human leather, yeah, I think you get some points.
Human leather.
Yeah, I think you get some points on
Human
John Wayne
leather.
Gacy that just, dressed as a clown, and that's his creepiest
But he
aspect.
buried them in his house.
Well, he buried them all over the fucking place.
True,
They
it's
still
only
don't
because
know
his
where,
house
all
filled
his
up.
bodies is.
Only
he couldn't have no
because
space.
his house filled up. They walked in. He was like, I got no more space in here to murder people.
I didn't kill nobody. Your house is full. It's a
Your
couch
hole's-
made of a dude.
Your house reeks.
No, but he was putting them in his crawl space and
Yep.
then covering them with lime.
Lime. And his furnace was in the basement, and there was like a police friend that came over. They went
Yeah.
to like use the bathroom. And the house apparently already had like a funk. But then the radiator kicked on as the heat kicked on from the basement.
Well, he kept telling his neighbors. His neighbors kept asking about it because he was like a contractor.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
that's what he did, and
Well,
he
that's
kept
why
telling
he was
him he's
able to
like,
hide bodies in like all the concrete foundations in all of Chicago.
it's awesome.
Half of Chicago streets are made of bodies by John the Clown Gacy.
Yeah, him and who's that dude the cop that murdered his wife?
I don't know. He's in your prison.
Hey, we're not allowed to talk about that. But anyway, so let's talk about John Gacy. Yeah,
Get away from me, John Gacy.
that's so funny. But I don't know. He's a weird guy too, man.
No shit.
I wouldn't be like,
Dress
hey
the
man, you want
clown,
to come over
going
for
to
Sunday
kids'
dinner?
birthday parties and killing their older brothers. Yeah, I'd
You know
say
what?
it's pretty
Yeah.
weird.
I think you should be the clown of my kid's birthday party.
Yeah, for real.
But I mean, he's another one. Like you keep talking about BTK that he was like going to church. I mean, John Gacy was the same thing, man. Like everybody
big
knew him as
community
like
man, and
like
yeah.
he like was like the community outreach guy.
Didn't he run for politics?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I thought it was like a city council or something like
Yeah,
that.
he was like a city councilman.
It's fucking crazy.
He's like
Got
cutting
elected.
motherfuckers up and shit.
Congrats, you elected a serial killer that dresses as a clown. The inspiration for It. Congrats. What a wild time. 1970s. Everyone in your neighborhood's trying to kill everybody and doing it a weirder way than the last guy.
I just like to think John Wayne Gacy's sitting at home. He's like, that Dahmer guy, he was fucking heads and filling them with bleach. I gotta dress up as a clown and bury him in my basement.
I've got class.
But you saying that almost makes me think of, was it season 5 of American Horror Story where they had like
Right.
the serial killer
Yeah,
banquet
yeah.
where they all like got together at the hotel or whatever?
Right.
Like you saying that legitimately makes you think of that, like them talking and their interactions and what it would be.
Did they ever come up with a motivation for the Night Stalker? Or was he just like, I want to be a serial killer? Do it?
Yeah, they
I thought it
talk
was more
about
like a home invasion thing.
no.
Yeah, but he would invade their homes and then say, what did he say? Like, swear to God that you love
Satan or something.
Satan, yeah.
Satan or something like that. And
They
then I
talk
think
about that he
used a
was
gun,
like,
right? He used to like shoot everybody.
yeah, but they talk about that like I don't know, like he started because he tried to join a street gang, and then they raped him.
He wasn't tough enough.
No, they raped him, and like I don't know, he was all like fucked up. Because like his mom was like raping him, his dad was, he was getting raped all the time.
That's rough.
Jesus.
But I mean, he ain't shit. He killed like 3 people anyway.
Yeah, but he was still like instilled like fucking terror in
He
people.
And
terrified Los Angeles.
870 will
like I
solve a
told
lot of
Spence,
these
I
problems.
think that's scarier than John Wayne Gacy. That's like, hey, strange boy that works in my shop, come over, and then he's drugging him. Like just you not doing anything weird,
What if
chilling
he
in your house, and just
what if
comes
he was
in here
like,
to
hey,
murder you.
strange boy, well, come to my house, and then he found out that it was the Night Stalker. Wouldn't it be a weird coinky dink? I'm a serial killer. You're also a serial killer.
Yeah, I mean that's what is that? Freddy versus Jason. That's the next one. John Wayne Gacy versus Ricky Ramirez. We're gonna pin. these guys
Honestly,
against
like
each
I
other.
am thinking like Freddy vs. Jason. Like he just picks, like slams
Well,
him in
I
the
mean,
ceiling.
that,
He's
that
like,
was in
quick cuts.
that was in American Horror Story 1987. And it was Mr.
Oh,
Jingles versus Ricky Ramirez.
Oh yeah, you're right.
And he
Yeah,
slammed
they were
Ricky
both
Ramirez on that.
fucking immortal ghosts.
And if anyone's wondering where Ricky Ramirez is, it was talked about in American Horror Story. He's just stuck at that camp. He can't
Yeah.
leave.
Yeah, because what's his fucking nuts? No, he can leave. He does, because he's got like the devil powers, but Mr.
Yeah.
Jingles picks him up because he's an old Nam vet and smashes him on that tree branch to the back of his head.
That was cool.
Yeah, he's badass. But no, so here's one that we haven't talked about yet. This is a weird one. Okay. And it just came to mind because we were talking about like weird serial killers and like guys that did like weird stuff.
Yeah.
H Holmes.
We should get to him because they consider
Well,
him like the oldest.
That's
one.
why I'm going to bring him
They
in.
say he's America's first.
Well, yes, and then they try to say like the word, like when you try to look it up, when I try to look up like the oldest, that's all they would bring up. That's the only info you could get is from him. And
because they say that's America's first.
Is that in American Horror Story? They had that dentist that was. Are they trying to say that was him or no? Okay.
So he's the inspiration for the hotel.
Yeah, because
he built a murder hotel.
Yeah,
in Chicago.
I did hear that.
And it was like
it was in Chicago. Though,
there was like trap doors and shit in it.
There was all kinds of stuff. There was like hidden doors where he could like creep in. It was a hotel.
Yep.
And he would like creep into people's rooms, or there'd be rooms where with like
you'd like walk in and there'd be like there'd be no windows, like no door handle.
Did he also offer like some type of medical treatment where he could do some treatment and then do weird experiments on people?
No, he just liked to kill people, man.
Yeah, and like they talk about that he had
used to, like break people up in rooms, and he had rooms that were like gas chambers.
Yeah,
and then he would have body shoots and dump them down in the basement, and like he would have like floors and like.
So not like the
way
hotel
it was built.
necessarily, but March or whatever, the guy who built the hotel. That's okay.
Yeah, so he's based off H Holmes.
Now that makes sense. Okay.
Well, because we got to talking about American Horror Story, and I thought of that him and. That's like a they don't even know if he actually did any of that. They just know he had this crazy hotel.
Like,
but when you build a hotel, and you go, "Hey, you put a gas chamber in here. What's that all about?" And you're like, "Oh, this fucking
fumigation, lots of bed bugs."
Fumigation, yeah, lots of bed bugs.
Lots of bed bugs.
For some reason, bed bugs keep it fast in that room. I figured I'd just install a permanent system.
We got big roaches.
Yeah. Hey, what's
kill the roaches, kill the people. It's just one big killing machine.
What's this laundry chute when I lift it up? It says body chute on the backside of the door.
Big roaches.
Yeah, big.
Lots of rats.
Laundry.
It's for shit stains.
Yeah, he also I'm pretty sure he hired like a bunch of contractors.
And then killed all of them.
Yeah, and killed them while they were building it. Because they'd ask like questions like, "You want me to make a room with no windows in it?" And he's like, "Gotta kill you," and then throw him down the body chute.
Well, they said that I think the hotel's still there.
Nothing is still there, dude. Chicago fucking burned down.
Well,
all that old shit's
gone. No, but I think maybe not. I don't know. But anyway, so they talk about it that the middle of this hotel, there was just I don't know, it was weird. People would go into the hotel and they would just it was like a maze. You just get lost, never find your way out ever again.
And here comes H Holmes letting you down the hall.
Yeah, the dude was crazy.
Absolutely. I wish they knew more.
Does anyone need a map to get out? Maps to get out. They also run
I
into
think
him.
I think he got killed in a duel.
You thought I was a map salesman in the hotel, but I was H Holmes the whole time.
I just
Chronicle and Top Hat for me.
Yeah, that also wasn't his name. He had 10 names because it was old Chicago, and you could just tell people, "I'm H Holmes." And they said, "No way to prove that. Guess that's who you are."
I just like the idea that I just like the idea that people showed up and there's just nobody in this hotel. There's no they're like, "Hey, is there someone to take our bags up to our room?" And he's like, "Oh, you won't need your bags where you're going." They go up. They're like, "Man, I really need some fresh towels."
He never even told us his room number.
Ding ding.
I like the kind of thing
shows up and he's in a maid outfit.
Yeah, he was working the front desk and then he's in the elevator as the bellhop guy.
Let me get the bellhop. He goes to the back room. He comes back out. He's got a bellhop hat on.
All right.
Yeah.
And then it's him with his fucking mustache and a wig. He's the maid.
Ready for dinner?
He's like, "Oh, just cleaning the rooms."
Yeah. Housekeeping.
That's funny as hell. So who was in on it then? Somebody had to be in on it. He wasn't doing it himself.
Maybe his whole hotel staff was in that. I think I read something where he would hire hotel staff, and they would work, and then he would murder them too. It seems like a
Jesus Christ.
terrible
So it's
business
kinda like, you know,
strategy.
he's like, all right.
They say he's got.
I'm going to spin 3 times whenever I turn around. Whoever's in my way is getting stabbed.
Stab it.
We're having our morning meeting. We're going to talk about some stuff.
It's a hell of a business plan, man. It gets the people to work for free. They're like, hey, man, it's been like 3 weeks since I got paid. You didn't pay me? Oh,
you want to take a ride?
Step in
Slide
this
down
room
the
right
chute.
over here.
Hey, I was asking about insurance. Yeah, head up to floor 3. We'll see about it.
Yeah. Well, once you stick your head in this box I built, it'll give you all
any problems you got, box.
all the insurance you can need. It's on the other side of this barbed wire trap.
Now he's got a jigsaw hotel. He's like, oh, that's the barbed wire floor. Don't get off on floor 4. That's where I keep all the fire.
Yeah. That's where I keep all the fire.
Yeah. Oh, the blood gets off on floor 3. Oh, that's funny. So who else do we want to talk about as far as serial killers, serial murderers? Any other interesting ones?
Those are honestly the ones I wanted to touch on. Kind of having a brain fart. That's about the ones like I said. We got Ed Gein. We talked about our John
Do you guys
Wayne.
think who's that politician that they were saying was the Zodiac killer?
Ted Cruz is not the Zodiac killer.
Did you guys?
What about the Zodiac Man?
Well,
It's hard on
Did they end
Zodiac.
up catching him?
no,
They didn't catch him?
but they had 3 notes from him.
3 notes, and I believe there was DNA too, wasn't there?
Well, yes, but the problem is they think they know who it is, but he's dead. So
They should arrest his corpse and throw it in prison.
I mean, is that a thing? You know, like they take the corpse to jail. Like, how dare you have done those
no,
things?
so
No, they go, we believe in reincarnation, so we're just going to lock
So-
up somebody else.
so what is said is that like they've been trying to crack like the Zodiac letters for like a long time.
Right.
And the reason it was so hard to actually crack the letters and like figure it out is because to break the code you needed the name of the Zodiac of the Zodiac killer, and it was the name of this guy that was like a suspect for like a long time,
Right.
but they could never prove it. And finally they were able to use like his name, and it like cracked this code, and I think they've cracked all 3 of them, I believe.
Yeah.
Or at least 2 of them.
Yeah, I think it's like 2 of them have been cracked, and there's still a 3rd one they're working.
Yeah,
on.
but the dude's dead. That they're pretty sure is like the Zodiac killer. He's dead.
Right.
I think he got hit by like a bus or something.
Yeah.
So it's a hell of a way to go out.
Granted, it's not serial killers, but like, have you heard about how like in World War II, after World War II, a whole bunch of Nazis went down to like South America?
No, we're getting into conspiracy theories now, huh?
I've heard, now I've not experienced it, but I've heard that you can travel through South America
And there's
and you will
supposedly,
come about towns.
German villages that speak
Exactly. You will
German.
come about entirely German villages.
Well, they talk about that there's like runes down there, and that like people have come upon them, and they're like, oh, these are Aztec runes, and then they start like going through them, and there's like Nazi symbols in there from like World War II, like the eagle with like,
Right.
and they're like, why is this here? Like this shouldn't be here. But I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, they probably fled to Cuba to start with, and then probably jumped over to like South America.
You never hear about like South America when you talk about like World War II. Like you hear about all of Europe and then like North America, but you never hear about anyone in South America or Mexico.
Because they were harboring all the Nazis where they were operating out of.
Is that it?
We debunked it on
We
this
debunked
podcast.
it. Surprise! You didn't think you would find anything cool.
You gotta wait till the end of the podcast to figure
Speaking of Zodiac, though, and because I'm a Batman fanatic, I'm really
out.
excited
Batman
that
versus
they're
the Zodiac Killer.
they're making the Riddler look like the Zodiac, and like the way
They
he
know who
does
it
his
is?
goggles. I think it's Edward Ashton. I believe his name is Edward Nygma, but I'm not sure. But they're making him look like Zodiac for this movie, and like the way he like leaves bodies and leaves notes, kind of like how the Zodiac did.
It's interesting.
It's something new and cooler, better than a green bowler hat, and call me the Riddler.
Come on, you got to get Jim Carrey in the role.
Please no, because
But-
Jim Carrey doesn't play an act like he doesn't act as like a
Batman
thing.
should just carry
Jim
a
Carrey is
shotgun.
just Jim Carrey.
Uh-huh.
It's Jim Carrey as the Riddler. It's Jim Carrey being the Grinch. It's just Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey.
It's fantastic.
Oh, I agree. I love Jim Carrey, but I'm excited to see someone actually play the Riddler and not Jim Carrey.
Right. I think that the age of serial killers is over, man. It has to be. I mean, we were just talking about that.
We still see some, but like I said, it's a lot harder to get the amount of victims that the older ones used to.
Because there's surveillance everywhere.
There's surveillance
everywhere. Everyone's got a phone.
There's cameras everywhere.
Police work
cameras
together
on every corner.
DNA, fingerprints. It's a lot. It's something. I mean, heck, we mentioned earlier, but we've all watched the show Dexter, and the forensic abilities they had. A big thing back in the day was they didn't have the idea to recreate the scene so they can figure out who it was, or literally have marks to like remain. It's harder. You know, how to even dispose, and the biggest thing is, like we said, this world is documented. Like, as our thing we got to last time with Sasquatch. At the end of the day, if there was a Sasquatch, there'd be an actual video of it, because everyone literally carries a video recorder in their phone. You can video record anything. Right.
I mean, it's even worse, man. I mean, because, like, with Bigfoot, he's at least in the woods. But, like, if you try to be this, like, mysterious murderer, for one, what is a way that you could kill people that they couldn't find out, like, what you used or anything?
Or as the mode, too, as you're leaving, you know, with even in Dexter, like, they always have him, you know, he's on his boat, but, you know, he's like he never got pulled over with the 6 garbage bags that smell like rotten meat in his back.
So, like, I took forensics in college, and they know all kinds of shit. They can find out all kinds of shit. They can find out, like...
Even if you try to clean, they can tell that you tried cleaning something up. And
they can tell how long you've been dead.
Lumisol.
Yeah.
So, like, they can tell how long you've been dead just based on the flies that are on you. So, when you die, they're called bot flies, and they're flies. And they'll show up within, like, 10 minutes of you dying. So... And then they immediately start eating and mating. So based on, they'll look at the maggots on it. So if there's no maggots, they know that you just died.
My crazy gun-toting grandpa, he actually knew a guy that would study maggots and how they like the pose on bodies, and like how, and so you could identify different maggots and how they came and how long they've been there. Kind of like what you're saying, but how many there are and how long that infestation goes, so he could tell how long that like person had been sitting there, or animal, or whatever it was.
Well, that's like, we had whole tests on like the life stages of maggots to see how long like a body's been there, like dead. Or they'll look at, like, they know like the timeline of like how long does it take for like rigor mortis. They go through all the stages of like decomp. So like you go through a whole phase of bloating, and then like you degas, and like the bloating is from like your internal organs like fucking rotting.
Yeah, because they're no longer
and then
working.
It like puts gas off, because like as soon as you die, your body starts decomp right away. And
then your blood's no longer pumping. That blood has literally been pumping your entire life, is now sitting still.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, for anyone who hasn't gotten it yet, I work at a prison, and carrying a dead body and seeing a dead body that's not like not gone through like being prepped for a funeral on like dead bodies, like it's weird, especially on like the blood not pumping, because like if you lay a dead body flat for any amount of time, like the whole back of it
pulls.
Yeah, it like bruises.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Well, that's another thing that they taught us, is you could tell, like, if a body was moved afterwards, you can tell because there'll be bruising where, like, the blood has pooled. Like, they've looked at everything on these things.
That's, like what we're getting to, though, they've done it. They've done the research. And it's not even like you're just saying off signs. Like, oh, I can tell there's so much maggot, so it's been so long. You can literally carbon date. You can literally go down and you can get it. You can look in the blood and see if there's toxins in, you know, what was in this DNA. You can try to check things. There's more than back in the day, especially in the 70s, than we have at this time. Right. So I think there still could be today. I just don't think the number would be as large as what the older killers used to get.
What I learned from all those classes was like,
don't kill people.
Well, yeah, there's that. But no, I learned that like all the testing takes a long time. All the stuff about like using a black light to see like certain liquids and shit, that's kind of bullshit. when we did it, we had to use this like a spray. I don't remember what it's called.
Lumisol.
Something like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to spray it, and it reacts with like blood.
Yeah, it's only supposed to react with blood.
And semen.
I think so.
I think bodily fluids.
Right. So it would
Yeah,
only react with that.
Like
So
a weird.
but then it would shine like bright white under a black light. But like blood doesn't just show up under a black light.
Mm-hmm.
Neither does like any other fluids.
Yeah.
They don't just like a lot of like the like TV shows will show like they'll bring a black light in and they're like, oh look, there's a whole outline of the killer, and like that's not true at all.
Well, normally, like luckily we've been bringing up Dexter. Dexter always does spray a luminol, and then that's how he sees it, because he sprays the spot and then like sprays that area and then kind of tries to get the shape of it.
Right. They also showed us that like
bright.
Like fingerprinting is fucking hard.
Very hard.
Not like taking fingerprints off a person, but like everyone's like, oh, I gotta wipe down the fucking doorknob. Probably not. You probably don't.
Well,
They
you'll most
probably
likely get
fucked
a
it up when they
partial
walked
off it. It's hard to get, and it's also hard to determine which fingerprint's the one you want.
Right.
Like when you say a door handle, like when we go to leave tonight, I'll touch the door handle, Jake will touch the door handle. Like we'll each have fingerprints, and when your wife comes in, there's another one. So that's just already 4 people, 4 different sets of prints, 10 fingers, 40 fingers that could have touched it,
Right.
and we don't know how we're grabbing. Like I said, it gets hard.
I only open doors with the back of my knee.
I will be watching this when I leave. I will confirm next week.
Please don't. I don't want to fix my door. They said
Crips the whole door.
so like one myth that you've heard of is like a lot of people will say like I'll either like cut off my fingertips or I'll burn them off. And they said like go ahead, because now you have a way more unique fingerprint than anyone else out there. So when we find your print, because you still create oils, that's what creates your print.
It's the oils on your fingers.
Right. It's just going to be a really, really fucked up and unique print. It doesn't make you not create a fingerprint. And they're like, so then when we find your crazy print, and then we find you with your burned hands, he's like, it's pretty easy to line it up instead of trying to line up a loop and an eye and an island and all these things.
What was his name? K, right? K
Jay.
told... No, I thought it was K told Jay.
Yeah.
You know, when he put his fingers on there and it got real hot and he melted his... I've always been impressed. I'm like, that's how you get rid of your fingerprints right there. Men in Black taught us.
Yeah, I mean, it would work if you were doing it constantly.
But that's what I was about to say, though. Wouldn't it would eventually re-heal, I'm assuming, and maybe
not in the same way.
You would have a scar now to that burn or whatever, but wouldn't it? There would still be similar.
What if you just cut the skin off the front of your bottom of your finger?
Justin, can I skin off one of
If
your
you
fingers?
didn't have any skin, then no. But now you're leaving blood everywhere.
I mean, eventually it'll stop bleeding.
What if I took your fingertips and put them on my fingertips?
I don't know if that would work, man. I mean, that's a new
try
type of killer. He's the sewn fingertip killer.
He gives off 10. He gives off 20 fingertips a fingertip.
What if you got those little like finger sock puppets?
I like
you
how
wore those as you were killing people.
Why don't you just wear gloves?
No, I don't like gloves. My hands
It
sweat.
worked for OJ.
Okay.
Speaking of serial killers. If the glove doesn't fit,
then
you must have quit.
That's not fair. You can't start rhyming in the courtroom and fucking expect that shit to work. No, I don't care. I could half squeeze a glove on and murder someone with it.
No, he got his brother to do it.
Yeah, is that it?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, the guy wrote a book called "If I Did It," and it says, in real small, it says "if."
Yeah,
And the rest of it's in big red letters.
We all just agreed that OJ killed his fucking wife.
I do agree.
Yeah, he definitely cut her head off.
At this point, he did it. Okay. I don't think anyone signed
I like
that
how-
deals with the juice.
I love
He lost his fucking Nature Valley sponsorship fast.
I love Dave Chappelle. He talks about him. He's just like,
Hey, Mr. Juice.
"Hey, Mr. Juice," and then like afterwards, like how he leaves, and they're all like, "Oh, he definitely did it."
No, they're
Oh,
like,
he
dude,
definitely
they're
did
like, how are you going to talk to that monster? That monster had 4,000 rushing yards.
He's an Olympian.
That is funny.
He had the most rushing yards in the NFL to date.
That's funny as hell.
So Justin, I gotta ask, what's our topic for next week?
Sequels.
I've thought hard about this, and what do you say?
Sequels.
Not sequels. We're not there yet. We're not there yet.
Aliens.
I think what I want to talk
Great
about
sequel.
for next week
Wendigos.
is something that was a large influence on my horror upbringing, and that's the Goosebumps books.
Oh, okay.
I want to talk about not just the Goosebumps books, but the Goosebumps brand, R.L. Stine, that kind of stuff. We'll see where that goes. It's, children's horror. And we'll talk about that more next week. But
so can we broaden that and just make it children's horror and just kind of envelop all of it?
Sure.
We normally do
we'll
in our
get
talks.
there. This is a broad topic.
Yeah.
We
ended up
normally
talking
get
about like forensics.
As long as we don't get on the topic of broads.
Yeah.
Probably not when we're talking about kids' books.
Probably not. So, anyway, guys, thank you very much for listening in to our beautiful talk about serial killers and chopping heads off and different things like that. Tune in next week for our talk about children's horror, specifically about the Goosebumps series. We hope to be able to entertain you guys again. I'm Justin.
I'm Jimmy.
And our guest,
Jacob.
Thank you guys very much. This has been the Midnight Hour Podcast. You have a nice night.